The rain battered the windshield as I gripped the steering wheel. My knuckles white. My heart pounding louder than the storm outside. Ethan's words from an hour ago echoed in my head. Each syllable a shard of glass cutting deeper. I've been in love with you for years. Caleb. My best friend, me brother and all, but blood had just torn our world apart with a single sentence. We'd been inseparable since we were kids. Growing up in the sleepy coastal town of Crescent Bay, Oregon. Ethan, with his crooked grin and endless curiosity, was the one constant in my life. The one who'd been there through my parents' divorce, my awkward high school years, and every stupid decision I'd ever made. We'd spent countless nights sneaking beers onto the beach, dreaming of escaping this small town for something bigger. But now, as I sped down the dark highway, the weight of his confession made those memories feel like lies. How had I not seen it? And why did it feel like my own heart was betraying me too? I pulled over onto a gravel shoulder, the ocean roaring in the distance. My phone buzzed. Ethan's name lit up the screen. I couldn't answer. Not yet. My whole life, I'd thought I knew who I was, Caleb Harper. Straight. Dependable. The guy who played it safe. But the truth was, I'd always felt something for Ethan I couldn't name a pull. A warmth. A need to be near him that went beyond friendship. I'd buried it. Ignored it. Because that's what you do in a town like ours, where people whisper and judge. Now, his words had ripped that truth out of me, and I was terrified. I met Ethan when we were 10, on the first day of 5th grade. He was the new kid, scrawny and quiet, with eyes that seemed to see right through you. I was the loud one, always trying to prove something. He'd been doodling in his notebook, ignoring the teacher, and I'd leaned over and whispered, "You're going to get in trouble." He just smirked and slid the notebook toward Maya's sketch of the ocean. So vivid it felt alive. That was Ethan, always creating, always feeling things too deeply. We became instant friends, the kind who finish each other's sentences, who know every secret, every scar. Or so I thought. By high school, we were a unit. Ethan was the artist, sketching murals for the school's theater productions, while I was the jock, captain of the soccer team. We balanced each other. He'd drag me to art galleries. I'd drag him to parties. Everyone loved Ethan, his easy laugh, his way of making you feel seen. I loved him too, but I never let myself think about what that meant. Not until tonight. We were at our spot, a cliff overlooking the Pacific, where we'd always gone to escape. It was our ritual, a six-pack, a bonfire, and the stars. Tonight, though, Ethan was different, quiet, fidgety. I thought he was just stressed about his art school applications. Then he turned to me, his face pale in the firelight, and said, "Caleb, I need to tell you something. I can't keep it in anymore." His voice broke, and my stomach dropped. I knew, somehow, that nothing would be the same. "I've been in love with you for years," he said, his eyes locked on mine, raw and desperate. I tried to stop, but I can't. I don't know how to be around you and not feel this. I froze. The words hung between us, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat closed up. All I could see was the pain in his eyes, the fear that I'd reject him. And I did the worst thing possible. I said nothing. I just stood up, muttered something about needing air, and walked away. I left him there, alone, on the cliff where we'd shared 1,000 memories. Now, sitting in my car, I hated myself. Ethan had bared his soul, and I'd run like a coward. But what was I supposed to do? I wasn't gay. At least, I didn't think I was. But the thought of losing him, of losing us, was unbearable. My phone buzzed again. Another text. Please. Caleb. Talk to me. I stared at it, my chest tight. I didn't know what to say, but I knew I couldn't keep running. I drove back to town, the rain easing into a drizzle. Ethan's house was a small, weathered bungalow near the pier, the kind of place that always smelled like paint and coffee. I parked, my hands trembling as I knocked on his door. He opened it, his eyes red, his usual confidence gone. You came back, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry, I blurted out. I didn't know what to say. I still don't. But I can't lose you, Ethan. He stepped aside, letting me in, and we sat on his couch, the silence heavy. Finally, he spoke. I didn't want to ruin us, he said. But I couldn't lie anymore. I've loved you since we were kids, Caleb. Every time I tried to tell you, I choked. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the boy who'd been my anchor, my mirror, my everything. And I realized I'd been lying to myself too. I don't know what I feel, I admitted. But I know I can't imagine my life without you. His eyes softened, and for a moment, I thought he might reach for me. But he didn't. Not yet. The days after Ethan's confession were a blur of confusion and avoidance. I went through the motions: work at the local hardware store, soccer practice, dinners with my mom, but my mind was stuck on that night. Every time I saw Ethan's name on my phone, my heart raced, and I'd shove it back in my pocket. I wasn't ready to face him, or myself. Crescent Bay felt smaller than ever, its narrow streets and gossiping neighbors closing in like a trap. I kept replaying his words, the way his voice trembled, the way his eyes begged me to understand. And I kept asking myself, what do I feel? I'd always thought love was simple boy meets girl, like in the movies. But this was messy, complicated, terrifying. I'd catch myself thinking about Ethan's laugh, the way his hands moved when he sketched, the way he'd look at me sometimes, like I was the only person in the world. I'd always brushed it off as friendship, but now I wasn't so sure. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I'd been drawn to him in ways I couldn't explain. It scared me not just because of what it meant, but because of what it could cost us. Crescent Bay wasn't exactly a haven for people like Ethan. Last year, a kid at our school came out, and the whispers followed him everywhere. His locker got vandalized, his car keyed. Ethan had been furious, sketching angry comics about small-town bigotry. But I'd stayed quiet, not wanting to rock the boat. Now, I wondered if my silence had hurt him more than I realized. If I admitted I felt something for him, something more than friendship, what would happen? Would I lose my place in this town? My team? My family? Would I lose him if I didn't? A week later, I couldn't avoid him anymore. He showed up at the hardware store, his sketchbook tucked under his arm, his expression guarded. You're avoiding me, he said, leaning against the counter. I fumbled with a stack of receipts, my face burning. I'm not. I lied. He raised an eyebrow, calling my bluff. Caleb, if you want me gone, just say it. I'll leave you alone. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed him hurt. raw, and aching. I don't want you gone, I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. I don't know what to do with this. Ethan. I'm freaking out. He nodded, like he'd expected it. I know, he said softly. I've been freaking out for years. He stepped closer, and my breath caught. I'm not asking you to have all the answers. I just need to know if you're willing to try. Try. The word hung there. Simple and impossible. I wanted to say yes, but fear choked me. Instead, I said, can we just talk? Like we used to. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Sure, he said, but it won't be the same. Caleb. You know that. We started meeting again, tentative at first, like we were learning each other all over again. We'd grab coffee at the diner, walk the beach at dusk, talk about everything except the thing between us. But it was there, in every glance, every accidental brush of hands. I started noticing things I hadn't before: how his eyes lit up when he talked about art, how his voice softened when he said my name. I started dreaming about him, dreams that left me waking up in a sweat, my heart pounding. One night, we ended up at the cliff again. The air was crisp, the stars sharp against the sky. Ethan was quieter than usual, sketching the horizon in his notebook. I watched him, my chest tight with something I couldn't name. What are you drawing? I asked, needing to break the silence. He turned the sketchbook toward Maya, drawing of us, sitting on this very cliff, our shoulders almost touching. This, he said. Us. The way I see us. I stared at the sketch, my throat burning. He'd captured something I hadn't dared to admit. We were more than friends, even if I didn't know what that meant yet. I reached for his hand, my fingers trembling. He froze, his eyes searching mine. Caleb, he whispered. What are you doing? I didn't know, but I didn't let go. Holding Ethan's hand that night felt like stepping off a ledge. My heart raced, not with fear, but with a clarity I hadn't expected. For the first time, I let myself feel what I'd been hiding. I loved him. Not just as a friend, but as something more, something deeper. I didn't have the words for it yet, but I knew I couldn't go back to pretending. Caleb, Ethan said, his voice shaking. Are you sure? I wasn't. But I nodded, because the thought of losing him was worse than any uncertainty. He squeezed my hand, and we sat there, the ocean crashing below, the world feeling both bigger and smaller than ever. For a moment, it was just us, no judgment, no expectations, just truth. But Crescent Bay wasn't ready for our truth. The next week, we were careless. We'd gone to the diner, laughing too loudly, sitting too close. I didn't think anyone noticed, but small towns have eyes everywhere. By the next day, the whispers started. A teammate of mine, Jake, cornered me after practice. Heard you and Ethan are getting cozy, he said, his tone sharp. That true? I froze, my old instincts kicking in. We're just friends, I muttered, hating myself for it. Jake smirked. Better keep it that way. I told Ethan about it, expecting him to be angry, but he just looked sad. You don't have to do this, Caleb, he said. You can walk away. I'll be okay. But I couldn't. Not anymore. I was done running. I took his hand, right there in his living room, and said, "I'm not going anywhere." His eyes widened, and then he kissed me soft, hesitant, like he was afraid I'd pull away. I didn't. It felt like coming home. The fallout came fast. My teammates started icing me out. My mom, who'd always loved Ethan, got quiet when I told her. "Are you sure?" She kept asking, like it was a phase. Ethan's art teacher, one of the few allies we had, warned us to be careful. "This town doesn't take kindly to different," she said. We knew the risks, but we couldn't hide anymore. We started stealing moments, late night drives, secret kisses on the cliff, moments that felt like ours alone. Then came the night that changed everything. We were at a party, one I dragged Ethan to, hoping to prove we could still fit in. But Jake and his friends had other plans. They cornered Ethan in the backyard, their words slurred and cruel. "Freak," they called him, shoving him against a fence. I pushed through the crowd, my blood boiling. "Back off," I roared, stepping between them. Jake laughed. "What? You his boyfriend now?" I didn't hesitate. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady. "I am." The fight was quick and ugly. I took a punch to the jaw, gave one back. Ethan pulled me away, his hands shaking as he checked my face. "You didn't have to do that," he said, but his eyes said something else: gratitude, love, fear. We left the party, bruised but together, and I knew I'd made my choice. We decided to leave Crescent Bay. Ethan got accepted to an art school in Portland, and I enrolled in a community college nearby. We found a tiny apartment, barely big enough for two, but it was ours. The first night, as we lay in bed, the city humming outside, Ethan traced my hand with his fingers. "I thought I'd lose you," he whispered. I kissed him, my heart full. "You're stuck with me," I said. Leaving wasn't easy. I lost friends, strained things with my mom. But I gained something bigger, a life where I could be myself, where I could love Ethan without fear. Our friendship didn't survive not the way it was. It became something more, something truer. We were two kids from a small town, finding our way in a world that wasn't always kind. But we had each other, and that was enough. Years later, we'd go back to that cliff, the place where it all began. Ethan would sketch, and I'd watch, marveling at how far we'd come. His confession had destroyed the life I thought I wanted and given me the one I was meant to have. Love, I learned, isn't about fitting in. It's about finding someone who makes you brave enough to be yourself, no matter the cost.